that's capital C calories. You remember from nutrition, lowercase c calories is 1/1000th of a food calorie. So kilocalories represent 1 food calorie with counts. So 9 food calories per gram versus carbs and proteins only give us 4. Carbs and proteins have other jobs. Fat's primary job is to be energy storage, and then it happens to also provide insulation and cushioning. All right, now then, when we need to break down fat, that's called lipolysis, lipolysis. And this is when we break down fat to get energy. Look what we get. 108 ATPs for each 1 molecule of fat, as opposed to 30 for each molecule of glucose. All right, here's that chain showing that we have an incredible production of ATP as we're breaking down all these fatty acids. It's releasing a lot of hydrogens too. Besides directly releasing ATPs, it's also releasing hydrogens, running through the citric acid cycle, running through the electron transport chain. We wind up with extra ATP. This is yellow adipose tissue. This is where we store our fat, but there's also something called brown adipose tissue. It's brown because of the number of mitochondria that are in it. It has a different function. It does thermogenesis. It generates heat. Because what it does is it lets the hydrogens leak out of the mitochondrial membrane so that the mitochondria do not produce ATPs. So remember that when we break down anything, we get ATP and we get heat. This one, where heat is usually a byproduct, just a waste. But brown fat, its goal is to make heat. So its primary job is to heat up the organism, and that's why it's primarily found in newborn humans. It's also found in hibernating bears. Notice where it is, around their neck and back. Now, it turns out that naturally thin people happen to have a greater proportion of brown fat than do the obese. So the new research is to try to figure out how to turn yellow fat into brown fat and make our bodies into fat-burning machines so that we waste the food that we eat. So instead of going on our hips, it just warms us up. I could really use that for both. I'm always cold, and of course I'm fat. And they've been able to do it, kind of test tube sort of thing, been able to turn yellow fat into brown. But that's one of the new fighting obesity directions. Nice. All right, now let's talk about ketones. The ketone bodies, it's a bigger category, and these are the things that are in the ketones. Acetoacetic acid, beta-hydroxybutyric acid, and acetone. These are the ketones. So we don't produce a ketone, we produce a category of these. Now this happens when a lot of fat is being burned rapidly. We're going to see that in someone who is starving to death, who's fasting, and the diabetic, because the diabetic is starving to death. Glucose cannot go into their cells, the cells think they're starving, and so it starts breaking down large amounts of fat. Now let's look at why ketones are produced. All right, we're breaking down fat. So now we are flooding, increasing the acetyl-CoAs dramatically, which inhibits the citric acid cycle. Because remember, we're getting 108 ATPs for every molecule of fat that's being burned. We get way too many ATPs. It inhibits the citric acid cycle. The alternative pathway is chosen, and we make ketones. So ketones are coming from the rapid breakdown of fat, where the rapid breakdown is producing too many ATPs, citric acid cycle is inhibited, the alternative pathway is chosen, and we make ketones. And that explains 4A. Where did all those ketones come from? Alternative pathway was chosen when fat was being broken down. And notice we're not too diabetics yet, but notice the acids that were in that ketone bodies. Acetoacetic acid, beta-hydroxybutyric acid. High levels of ketones drop the pH. So someone who is in uncontrolled diabetes, type 1 particularly, will develop something called metabolic acidosis because of the high levels of ketones. Again, we'll talk about that when we get to the endocrine system.